Okay, good morning, everybody. As we start the pitas of the day, so I'm going to show you a second. I'm going to share with you a PDF that I found, and if anybody over here on Zoom or those that are watching on will watch this on the Torah Direct, if you send me to my email, uh, I will send you a PDF copy. You'll see how intricate these laws are, and you should read through this PDF, and maybe you'll get some kind of understanding of the karbonis, the sacrificial offerings that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash, all the sacrificial offerings, from the sacrifice of the animal to the sacrifice of the bird, to the sacrifice of the meal offering, which the Torah is talking about at these present times in this parsha, in this portion, part of these portions. So you can send it to Zalman Bukiet at Yahoo, ZALMANBUKIET at Yahoo, and I will send you a PDF file, and you can. It's a lot in Hebrew, a lot in English, and you can, in your leisure, read through all these wonderful things. I'm just going to share with you quickly, just today, so you'll understand what's going on over here. This is the Beis Hamikdash. This is the temple. And there is the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach, this is the Mizbeach. There's a whole argument in the Talmud how many fires there were in the Mizbeach, were in the altar. But this is when you're going to hear the keves, here's the ramp going up to the Mizbeach. You see right over here, I hope you can see my pointer, Makom Hadeshen. This is the place where you'll hear in the many times that you put it the place where the deshen is, where the ashes are. So that is near the keves. There's a place where they put the ashes every morning. They put the ashes there, and in this place, the ashes would go into the ground. This one, the big fire, is the main fire of the altar. That was where all the animal sacrifices were brought up. The little one over here was the Eish Tamid, was the everlasting fire that was on the altar. And the one to the left was Maracha Hashniya, was the second altar, was second fire, where the Ketores was sometimes brought up. So there were three fires, so according to some, there were four fires. There's a whole argument. To the right of the Mizbeach was where the animals were sacrificed. These were the rings, the tabars of the rings, where the animals laid down and sacrificed. These were the hooks where the animals were hung to be skinned, and these tables were where the animal was cut up. This was a major part of the service of the Beis Hamikdash. This was not the latter. This was the major part. You see, it says of Ezras Yisrael, the Jewish people were only allowed to, regular Jews were only allowed to in this part, this small part of the Beis Hamikdash. Past this part, a regular Jew was not allowed. And this was Ezra's Kohanim. This is where the Kohanim were allowed. So a regular Jew, when he came to the Beis Hamikdash, was only allowed in the front part of the temple. And so that's the Beis Hamikdash, that's the Mishkan, the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan. And this was that, number one. Number two is now, I want to show you quickly the different minchos. You're going to have what we mentioned in the Torah today, yesterday, and today. So a mincha, so here you have so much stuff going on over here. So here you have mincha. A mincha is made out of soiles. So an ephah, you hear all these ephah. An ephah, a yisarein, is 43 eggs and 1/5 of an egg. Is 1/10 of an ephah. So Asira Eifa. You're gonna keep on hearing these expressions. 43. So really, I'm not sure exactly how much 43 eggs, the amount, the weight, and the volume of 43 eggs plus 1/5 of an egg. The shemen lug, you'll hear the Torah say a lug, shemen, which is 600 mil. This is the kemitza we mentioned yesterday. He takes with the 3 fingers, 1 handful. So his thumb and his pinky were separate. He took the broken pieces of the matzah. So this is the way you made a mincha soilis. You added fine flour, you poured oil into the bowl, you added frankincense, added a little bit of oil, mixing it, putting the kaimitz into the bowl, scooping 3 fingers, bringing the mixture to the mizbeach, bringing the holy bowl of kli hasharos to the mizbeach, putting the levina into the kaimitz, picking up the levina, eating the mincha, and burning it on the mizbeach, and then salting the kaimitz. All these things you're gonna hear in the reading of the Torah. So, for example, in the Torah today, we start in Leviticus chapter 2 is a minchas marcheshes. So this is a minchas marcheshes. This is the way you make a minchas marcheshes. Mixing, adding oil to the mixture, adding flour, pouring some oil into the bowl, forming it into loaves, dividing it into 10 pieces, kneading, adding water, transforming it to kli hasharos, breaking it into hizasim, baking it in a deep pan on a stove, sprinkling water on the loaves, rest, same as Seilas Mincha, adding levina, adding the remainder of oil. So this was in a pot. Minchas marcheshes is the way you cook something in a pot. So this is who eats the mincha was a kohen, only a male kohen. It was eaten in the Ezras Yisrael or Ezras Kohenim. That's where it was eaten, and it had to be eaten in the day until the night. And even he gives you the bracha that you made. As I said, this is so many stuff, so much over here, vast knowledge in the laws of all these kind of minchas. This is a mafet taner, a mincha that's made in an oven. This is a mincha. All these minchas, mafet taner, the kikin. So this is the kikin. The difference between rikikin and the regular mafit, the regular mincha, is the difference between, I said yesterday, between a lafa and a kikin is a matzah. So a kikin is a thin, like a matzah, thin and hard, while a regular mincha was a lafa kind of a dough. So this is a machmas taner. We learned yesterday. It's made on, you see, it's baking flat pan. That's a flat pan of mincha. This is marcheshes, a deep pan mincha. So that's what we're going to learn today. Hopefully, as I said, if you're interested, you can send me this. You can send me your email, and I will send you this PDF. It's many pages, 56 pages to be exact. And you can go through it, read through it. There's a lot of stuff, Let's go to the learning of the Chumash of the day. In Minchas Marcheshes. If you chapter 2, verse number 7. If your sacrifice is a meal offering made in a deep pot. So you hope you saw that. Soilas b'shem and teasa, it shall be made of fine flour and oil. So Rashi says, what means a marcheshes? There's a deep vessel. This was a deep vessel in the temple. And since it was deep, the oil gathered together and the fire did not burn it. Consequently, the meal offering made in it Vibrate, the word resh, vibrate. Rechushin. Anything which becomes softened through liquid, like in a case of a deep frying minchas maracheshes, appears to vibrate and wiggle. So that's why it's called maracheshes, because it's cooked, baked in a deep pot, like a cooking kind of situation, not a frying situation, but a cooking. Verse number 8. You shall bring the meal offering that you made from these types to God. And you're going to bring it to the Kohen, and he'll bring this offering, this meal offering, to the Mizbeach. The Rashi says, which you shall be made from any of these types of meal offerings, which will be made from one of these types, it needs to be brought to the Mizbeach. Vikriva and its owner will bring it to the Kohen. Vigisha Kohen, and then the Kohen brings the Kemitza, Ela Mizbeach. Sorry, he brings the korban, actually brings the mincha to the Mizbeach, so that he brings it close to the southern western corner of the altar. Verse number 9. Then the kohen lifts out. Again, that's the koimitz. That is the koimitz is what he takes away with his three fingers. Askarasa, it's remembrance, because it's a reminder of the sin that a person did, the tshuva. He brings upon the altar this koimitz, as Rashi says. Here koimitz. This is the fistful. He brings it as a pleasing fragrance to God. Verse number 10. When it said it's been on mincha, anything left over after the kohen takes the koimitz and also the lavoina, all the frankincense he takes off the mincha. Anything that's left is la'aron lavanav. That the rest of it belongs to Aaron and his sons. Kodesh kadoshim ish Hashem. It's holy of holies. Verse 11. Kol mincha, any meal offering, asher takrivu Hashem, which you bring to God. Loisaseh chametz. You're not allowed to have it leavened bread. The Beis Hamikdash, everything was all unleavened bread. He calls serve dvash, because any kind of leavening or honey, like saktina meneshash, is not allowed to be brought as an offering. So Rashi says, called dvash, any sweet fruit extract is called honey. Doesn't mean honey of a bee or honey. It means any kind of a sweetening. So this was made out of flour and water, like matzah. Flour, like matzah you eat on Pesach, flour and water. This had oil in it, but the matzah you eat on Pesach has flour and water. It's not made out of juice. It's made out of simple water. Verse number 12. However, you shall bring them the first fruit offering to the Lord. They shall not go up on the altar. So Rashi says, what can you bring? What can you bring from the leaven and honey? So that's once a year they brought bread to the base of chalas. Once a year was brought chalas. The first fruit offering on Shavuos, namely the shtei halechem, 2 loaves of bread brought on Shavuot, which is from leaven. And it says they shall be baked leaven. The bikurim was also first fruits, which contained dvash, sweetness, the first fruits of figs and dates, etc., pomegranates. So then you brought it to the Beis Hamikdash, but those things, even the shtei halechem, when leyalu, you can't bring it as a korban. So in the Beis Hamikdash, it was Pesach a whole year. Pesach a whole year, and that's it. Besides, again on Shavuos, which was brought the 2 loaves of bread on Shavuot, the holiday of Shavuot. Verse number 13. You shall salt every one of your meal offerings, sacrifice. And you shall not omit salt of your God's covenant from the place upon your meal offerings. all sacrifice, takriv melech. There had to be melech, salt. That's the covenant that God made with the with the lower waters. That the salt would always be on the mizbeach. That's one of the reasons why on your table you always have to have salt. Salt needs to be on your table. And whenever we make a motzi, we dip it in salt. This is because your table is compared to a mizbeach. The Rashi says, as I just said, there was a covenant made with the salt since the sixth day of creation. It was the lower waters were promised that they would be offered on the altar. When the God separated the upper waters from the lower waters, the Medrash says the lower waters had a complaint that they were put down and from the upper waters. And God said, I'm going to honor you, that you're going to be on every carbon. And so too, you'll be on every Jewish table. On all sacrifices, there'll always be melech. There'll always be stone. Okay, verse number 14. And when you bring a meal offering of first grain to the Lord, that is on Shavuos, Aviv kalu be'esh, it shall be your first grain from barley, then the sacrifice of barley, as soon as it ripens, parched over fire, kernels full in their husks, grounded into coarse meal. Coarse meal. So Rashi says, not just im. It says im. Now the word im is meaning if you want to, because you have to bring on Shavuos a carbon. You have to bring a bekurim. You have to bring. You have no choice, because it's not optional. Scripture is referring to the minchas omer, the omer offering, a communal sacrifice brought on the 16th of Nisan, which is an obligation. Thus, the verse reads, when you bring a minchas bikurim, which is, we're talking here about the omer on Pesach, a meal offering of the first grain. Scripture is referring to the minchas omer, the omer meal offering, which is offered in Aviv, meaning as soon as the grain is ripened. That's the Chodesh, the holiday of Aviv, and it comes from barley. That's the only time barley was used. Usually, all the minchas were all out of fine flour. Only once a year, barley was brought. And that's Sfirat Omer. Omer is the barley offering. It's the Aviv, and its early verse, Shara Aviv, the barley has ripened. Kol be'esh, where they dry out the grain over fire in a roasting pipe. Plain and tracted. Aviv refers to reverse by using those selling roasted seeds. They had to do this to the grain, for otherwise it would not be able to ground up, and because it's too moist. Gerish Carmel, what does that mean? Kernels full of husk, broken up while still moist. Gerish Lashon Shvira v'Tchina. Coarse meal. Gerish is an expression donating breaking up, grinding with a grit millstone. Likewise, indeed, it made the teeth grind. Carmel, what's the meaning of the word carmel? The grain is ground up while the husk, the kar, is still full. Meaning when the produce is still fresh, the full of its stalks, hence a fresh ear of grain is called carmel. And similarly, in the sheaves of fresh grain, the carmel bitzilkana, this is brought down in the Malachim. Verse number 15. You put upon this mincha of bikurim, you put upon it shem and oil. You place upon it frankincense. Mincha, this omer offering is a meal offering. And the kohen shall cause it to go up and smoke on the mizbeach. He takes from its coarse meal, from its oil, from all its frankincense, and it's put as a fire. Isha Hashem, it's a fire offering. Okay, that's finishing the Chumash of today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We're holding on chapter 38 in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us very deep concepts in Chassidus. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us that both the soul and the body, both of them are really created entities. To God, both the soul and the body are both created. That's the way it is. The soul might be spiritual to the body, but to God, they're both a creation. One means a creation in general. When you say something was created, then it's very far away from its creator. And for the creator to make a creation, he has to, so to say, hide himself. He has to contract himself. So what's the difference between the body and the soul? The only difference is how much contraction there was. When you say something is hidden from something, something is more hidden from A, and it's less hidden from B, or the opposite way. It's more hidden from B than from A. Like you take a elementary student and a high school student. That's they both same difference. The only difference is both same people. The kids. The difference is one is easy. It has more capability of learning, and one is less. And therefore, you teach the elementary student to his capacity, to the high school student their capacity. But they both need a vessel of learning. One is more capable, one is less capable. So one has more revelation, one has less revelation. And then when he goes to college, he has much more revelation. So it all depends on the concept of revelation. Both of them are equal in the concept of, to God, that both of them are created. So we have to realize that concept in Kabbalah. There's no thing as higher and lower in the aspect of spirituality. To God is no higher and lower. To God there is more revelation and less revelation. So the soul has more revelation, and the body has less revelation. If the body could have more revelation, then the body would have more revelation. As we hope, the Mashiach comes, and the body will have equal revelation as the soul. So they'll both be equal. The body and the soul will be equal. That's what happened when God created Adam and Eve. Their body and the soul were both equal. Then the body sinned. So now the body had less revelation. And the soul has more revelation. But to God again, both the body and soul are both created. The body is created and the soul is created. That's why by Jews, you have to respect the body. You're obligated to respect your body because they're both created by God. Not only respect your neshama, you got to respect your body. You're not allowed to abuse your body. You're not allowed to hurt your body. The person passes away. You have to restore respect to the body. Why? Because not, oh, the soul left it, it's gone. No, but the body was created like the soul was created. They're both a creation of God. One has more revelation, one has less revelation. So that's what the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain about. In terms of concealment of continence, meaning the degree in which the revelation in the inner aspect of the divine life force is concealed, the light, meaning the divine creative force, is the same in both body and soul. It's concealed equally in both. Why? Because the garment, whether it's the body or the soul, the garment hides the light. It conceals, and it clothes itself are identical. They're both vessels. Why? Because both body and soul are in this world. and throughout the world and all its creatures, spiritual as well as physical, the light and the life force issuing from the breath of God is equally concealed. God needs to hide himself from the soul, so to say, as he hides himself from the body. If God would reveal himself to the soul would disappear. As he would reveal himself to the body today, the body would disappear. So there's no really difference to God in the concept of body and soul. Achin is slavish, beklippus noiga, and then ultimately is the same thing the way the Abishter came down into the world. It's just another concealment. What's the difference in concealment when it's concealed? It's a concealment to God. So to God, the soul, the body, the world is all a concealment to him. It's all a concept that he had to contract himself to create a soul. He had to contract himself to create a body. He had to contract himself to create this world. That's the way the Abishter created the world. So you look at it over here. Finally clothing itself in klippat noiga in order to give life to the total material world. So let's look a little bit over here. The Alter Rebbe has described the process whereby the divine life force descends from the lofty godly origin to the point where it creates, gives life to the physical matter. Meaning, from the breath of God's mouth, a reference to Malchus of the world of Atzilus, to the world of materiality in the world of Asiya. And he defines it in a 3-step in this process. One, a descent from level to level, which in Kabbalah is called Seder Shtalshlus, the descent of levels. Number 2, numerous tzimtzumim, the contractions that God had to have to hide himself, to conceal himself. Number 3, powerful tzimtzumim. These are big condensers. Number 4, clothing itself in klippas noiga, ultimately coming down in a klippa and a covering that shines, that has the capability of shining. So let us examine them individually. Descend from level to level to reach down to the level of the world of action. The life force must first descend from world of Atzilus to Bria, from the world of emanation to the world of creation, then to the world of formation, and finally to the world of action. What is the meaning of these 4 worlds? The meaning of these 4 worlds is the meaning of the condensement of this light. So the light goes through one world, it's condensed, it comes down into another world. It's condensed. It's like massive transformers. Within each of these worlds, there are many levels, and a life force must descend through them all before reaching to the next lower world. Number 2, numerous tzimtzumim. Each descent of the life force entails a contraction of the light, and the life force lessens its intensity. Same life force, it thus lessens its intensity. Number 3, but the descent of tzimtzum alone, no matter how numerous, will not make it possible of the creation of a physical being. The divine life force will still be at a level where anything created by it would be spiritual being, albeit in a lower grade of spirituality. Creation of physical matter proposes another condition. Powerful tzimtzum, powerful contractions, a tzimtzum which entirely changed the character of the life force, and not only its intensity, to the point where it can create and give life to a material being. But even this type of tzimtzum, contraction, cannot produce a world like ours, in which it's not apparent God is the creator, where in fact God's creation can be used to define defiance of his will. So that's why we have to go to the next level. This is achieved only when the life force is clothed itself in klippat noiga. and thereby also in other klipot, other coverings, which we'll soon explain. As defined in the first chapter, Tanya, klipat noiga is a mixture of good and evil, and that's the whole story of the tree of knowledge. Therefore, whatever receives godly force through the veil of klipat noiga, in which the life force is closed, he can be utilized either for a holy purpose, in serving God's will through performing a mitzvah, or an unholy purpose, in violating his will through a sin. That's the way it goes. We thus, in a short version, gave you, according to Kabbalah, according to teachings of the Chassidus, how this life, it's the same life force. To the Eivish, nothing changed. To God, nothing changed. It's the vessels that created the entities, the light that came from it. But to the Eivish, nothing, there's no tzimtzum by God. There's no contractions by God. It's the same light. As in Chassidus, it's explained, so Pashut. It's a light. It's like if you example, he's going to give the example in a moment, you take a light and you start putting veils in front of it. Same light. It's the veils that are creating the second light, seemingly another different kind of a color light. But it really comes from the same exact energy. So to the light, there's no tzimtzum. So that what comes after the light, after the veil, is the tzimtzum, but not to the light. So that's in short. This means all things of this world that are permitted and pure, which receive the vitality directly via this klipat noga, because it's a cover that shines. That's why it's called klipa noga, a cover that shines. Men vayada mushpoim, but ultimately with the negative of this covering that shines, the capability of a covering that doesn't shine receives its unika, its vitality. Because since this is a covering that has good and evil, it's a covering that shines. It means it's a covering, but that means it has some negativity in it. It has some evil, so to say, and it shines. It has good. Since it has some negativity, so total negativity receives its life force from it. So that's a problem. The problem is, you take example of eating. You can eat. Either you can eat l'shem shamayim. You're doing it for the sake of the heaven, because that's the noiga, that's the shine. Or you can eat. It's kosher food, and you ate for no reason, not for the sake of God. That's not like glutton. You didn't do an aveda per se, because you ate kosher. But since you didn't eat l'shem shamayim, now impurities have received its power. Impurity has received its power, and slowly it starts to cover you and to weigh on you. That ultimately, God forbid, if you don't do something, if you're not going to bring in godliness, it's going to bring you down to do something on a sin. So it started off with not a negative, but it wasn't a positive. And when you start off with not a positive, it ultimately will turn into a negative, because you're giving life force to negativity. So that's the middle. So the Alter Rebbe says, what is the middle? Is the klipat noga. Holiness cannot become bad. That's what you have in Torah. You have a mitzvah, is you have to do. An avera, you're not allowed to do. The biggest problem is the middle, which is not a mitzvah and not an avera. The more you live the middle life, more holier, the less you'll come to do an avera, to do a sin. The more you do, the more you live. You take the middle, and the middle is void of holiness. It slowly moves to the sin. It slowly moves to the sin. And that's why the middle is very important. That's why it says, Kaddish atzmacha lemutlach. Sanctify yourself with that's what you're allowed. That's an expression. That's what's allowed. That's what's not allowed is not allowed. And that's what's allowed is not always needed. So I mean, if it's not done for the sake of heaven, maybe it's not needed. You don't need it. Oh, but it's allowed. It's not needed. Only things that you do for the sake of heaven, even allowed, should be used, because that's the middle. That is called the middle place where you have a great capability to eat, and that's a majority of a person's life. Because how many mitzvahs you can do a day? So the majority of your life is about eating, sleeping, living, working. These are all things that are permitted. So majority of your day is you're in the realm of the middle realm. You're in the middle realm of this world, which either can be used for holiness, and that's up to you. You didn't decide what a mitzvah is. You didn't decide what a Veda is. What's given to humanity is the middle, to decide either to make it a holy or to make it unholy. So let's take your house. You make a decision. Your home is going to be your home. Everybody should have a house, and you shouldn't do. You're not going to do sins in your house, but your house can be a holy home. It could be a regular home. And if you don't make your house holy, then ultimately other things are going to creep into this home. Other impurities are going to creep into this home. So the Alter Rebbe continues. So that's basically Alpha became. Nevertheless, even though everything is a contraction, nevertheless, the God, the illumination, meaning a flow of vitality, which is God's illumination, gives life to all creatures of this world. By the way of this garment of Klippus Neder, Eina Shava Bikulam, is not the same for all, and difference between the life force of various creatures in terms of the contraction and expansion. In some creatures, the life force is constricted and limited, while in other, it finds broader expressions. And that's the difference. So a kosher animal, it finds that's why you bring a carbon, a kosher animal. A non-kosher animal, it finds less. So you see in the explanation, it says the difference between concealment of life force emits and contraction can be expressed as follows. Suppose one hangs a thick curtain on a window to screen out the sunlight. The light entering the room through the curtain will be entirely different quality. In fact, it might be described as a mere echo of the original light. This is concealment. If, on the other hand, one boards up the window and leaves a teeny hole by which the light may pass, the light shining through the hole, though greatly restricted, will be the same qualitatively as the original light. This is meant by contraction. So there's concealment and contraction. Concealment is when you cover cover the window, either if you cover the window, the light doesn't come in. But if you put a curtain, or you could cover the window, you make a hole. So is too with regard to our subject. Klippas Noiga is a thick curtain which veils divine creative power quality from all creative creatures in this world. This curtain light varies, however, from one creature to another in the degree of this contraction. The Alter Rebbe now goes to enumerate these differences. I hope that it whet your appetite as the Alter Rebbe is going to continue this unbelievable teaching, but this ends the Tanya for today. So to be able to continue, we'll see you tomorrow, as the Alter Rebbe is going to continue to teach us an unbelievable teaching in Chassidus. Hopefully, I'll see you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Today is the third day of the month, which starts on chapter 118. What I'm talking about? Chapter 18. I'm sorry. The third day of the month is chapter 18 till chapter 22. 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. And you would have done the chitas of the day. Have a beautiful day. Have a wonderful day, a happy day, a very healthy day. God bless you all.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you tonight at 7:30 for a class on the portion of the week, on the portion of Vayikra. 7:30 tonight.